Every loyal husband thinks he understands his wife, but there's one truth almost no man ever sees coming. And the craziest part? It's the one truth that quietly determines whether his marriage becomes a sanctuary or silently falls apart. Here's the shocker. Your wife is not the woman you think she is. Not because she's hiding anything malicious, not because she's trying to deceive you, but because she becomes a completely different version of herself depending on how you show up. Most men never realize this. They assume their wife's behavior is just who she is. Her silence, her frustration, her coldness, her distance. But what if I told you those reactions are not her default personality? They're responses, signals, warnings, and they all point to a hidden truth buried so deep in human psychology that almost no one ever talks about it. The truth that determines whether she feels safe or lonely, connected or abandoned, cherished or invisible. And here's the part that will sting a little. A wife rarely tells her husband this truth. She expects him to feel it, to sense it, to understand it without being told. But most men never do, and that's why marriages collapse silently. But wait, because the twist you're about to hear will flip your entire understanding of relationships upside down. Subscribe
If you
before
could
you
only
forget,
hear
because
what's
the
in my
deeper we
heart,
go, the more
you'd
uncomfortable this
understand the
gets.
link
Here's the
between
part
us.
that feels almost unfair. Your wife mirrors
I
the
don't
emotional
think we are
atmosphere you create,
connecting anymore.
even when she doesn't want to. Psychologists call it emotional resonance. It means people unconsciously reflect the emotional tone of the person they trust most. And in marriage, you become her strongest influence, but not in the way you think. If you pull away emotionally, she becomes anxious. If you grow irritated, she becomes defensive. If you shut down, she becomes cold. And here's the crazy twist. You might think she changed first. Most husbands do. But the hidden truth every loyal man must understand is this. She reacts to the version of you she last experienced, not the one you believe yourself to be, not the one you think you're showing her, but the one she felt through your actions, your tone, your silence. And here's where the danger creeps in. You assume she just gets upset for no reason, but she's responding to an emotional shift you didn't realize you created. A shift so subtle that even you missed it. She didn't change out of nowhere. She changed in response. And this one realization explains why so many men feel blindsided when their wives finally break. But we're not even close to the twist yet, because the next part exposes a psychological need wives almost never express out loud, a need that decides whether she leans in or quietly checks out.
If you ask your wife what she needs, she'll say things like, "I just want you to listen. I want to feel appreciated. I want connection." But that's not the real truth. Those words are surface-level translations for a much deeper emotional need. A need that most women feel, yet never articulate clearly. Here it is. She needs to feel that her emotions matter to you more than your immediate comfort. Let that sink in, because this is where loyal husbands unintentionally fail. You love her, you provide, you protect, you stay loyal. But the moment her emotions become inconvenient, complicated,
This is exactly
messy,
what I was talking about.
confusing,
It's
most men
always
retreat,
about you,
not because
isn't
they
it?
don't care, but because they don't know what to do. But here's the psychological truth. When she brings you her emotions, she's not asking for solutions. She's asking for presence. Women check your emotional temperature long before they check your words. She can tell if you're irritated. She can sense if you're dismissive. She can feel if you're tired of the conversation. That's why she says, "Forget it." That's why she shuts down. That's why she withdraws. Not because she wants to, but because she felt you disconnect. This is the moment that decides everything. And the twist is coming in the next section.
I'm telling you,
Because what
this is
she
the
does
best
next is the
idea
part
I've
most
ever
husbands
had.
never
We have
see
to do it
until
this
it's
way.
too
It
late.
just makes the
Here's
most
the moment
sense.
that destroys marriages quietly. Women don't fall out of love loudly. They fall out of love silently. And it begins with one subtle shift, when she stops expecting emotional understanding from you. The moment she stops hoping you'll get it, she starts protecting herself instead. This is where you see changes like she becomes quieter, shorter, more distant, less affectionate. You think she's moody. You think she's overreacting. But internally, she's doing something far more serious. She's reducing her emotional investment to match the safety she feels with you. And she does this subconsciously. Not because she's angry, but because her brain is trying to avoid emotional pain. Once a wife reaches this point, her emotional world starts shifting away from you, not toward you. And here's the twist. By the time a loyal husband finally notices something is wrong, she has already gone through months of internal detachment. You're seeing the final stage, not the beginning. But don't panic, because in the next section, you'll learn exactly what triggers this shift and how loyal men can prevent it before it starts.
Every marriage operates on an unspoken emotional equation. And here it is. Attention moves to safety. Safety moves to affection. And affection moves to loyalty. If one breaks, the rest collapse. Let's break it down. When you give her attention, not constant, but intentional, she feels emotionally safe. When she feels safe, she opens up. She becomes affectionate. She becomes warm. She becomes playful. And when affection is present, loyalty becomes natural for both of you. But here's where most husbands accidentally break the equation. They replace emotional attention with practical effort, working harder, providing more, fixing problems, taking responsibility. These are good things, but they don't replace emotional presence. Women thrive on emotional consistency, not emotional bursts, not emotional moments, consistency. But loyal husbands often assume their actions are enough. Here's the twist. She doesn't feel loved by what you do. She feels loved by how you are when you do it. Your tone, your vibe, your presence. That's what her heart reads. Not the action itself, but the emotional energy behind it. And in the next section, you'll discover the secret wives almost never say out loud. A secret that explains their most confusing behaviors. Every wife, intentionally or not, gives her husband emotional tests. Not because she wants to judge him, but because she wants to feel secure. Here's the hidden truth. A woman tests your emotional presence, not your strength. Here are the subtle tests. When she vents, when she gets insecure, when she feels neglected, when she brings up something small. She's not testing if you're tough. She's testing if you're there. If she feels you pull away emotionally, she spirals. If she feels you stay present, she relaxes deeply. Women test for consistency. Men test for loyalty. That's the gender difference no one talks about. But here's the twist. When you fail her emotional tests repeatedly, she stops giving them. And that may sound like a good thing, but it's the worst sign you can get. Because when a woman stops testing, it means she no longer believes you can show up emotionally. That's when she withdraws. That's when intimacy dies. That's when connection breaks. Drop a comment. Would you pass these emotional tests? Because in the next section, you'll see exactly what happens in her mind when she feels truly understood. When a woman feels genuinely understood by her husband, her entire personality shifts. Her guard drops. Her warmth returns. Her femininity flourishes. And here's the psychological truth. Understanding creates safety, and safety awakens love. This is why emotionally present men create emotionally available wives. When she feels understood, she becomes soft. She becomes affectionate. She becomes nurturing. She becomes expressive again. Most husbands think this version of their wife disappeared, but it didn't. It simply went into hiding because the emotional environment wasn't safe enough for it to come out. Women don't become distant randomly. They retreat when they feel unheard. But here's the twist. A wife is not looking for a perfect man. She's not looking for a hero. She's not looking for someone who solves everything. She just wants one thing: a man who stays emotionally available when it would be easier to shut down. That one trait changes everything. And in the next section, I'll explain the single biggest mistake even loyal husbands make. A mistake that slowly kills emotional intimacy. Here's the silent killer of modern marriages: emotional autopilot. It's when husband and wife stop being intentional and start simply coexisting. You're loyal, you're stable, you're responsible, but you're emotionally numb. You communicate only when needed. You respond instead of engaging. You listen only enough to get through the conversation. And the crazy part, you don't even realize you're doing it. You're tired, you're stressed, you're stretched thin, but she feels the emotional gap instantly. Women detect emotional distance faster than men detect physical distance. Here's the twist. You think you're being calm. She thinks you're being cold. You think you're being relaxed. She thinks you're disinterested. You think there's no problem. She thinks there must be something wrong. This mismatch destroys connection slowly. And the worst part? A loyal husband can lose his wife without ever cheating, lying, or breaking trust, all because he went emotionally absent without noticing. But in the next section, you'll learn the mindset shift that immediately reconnects a drifting marriage. Here's the fix no one teaches husbands. Not therapy, not communication tricks, not saying the right words. It's this: shift from reacting to her emotions to holding her emotions. That means you don't get defensive. You don't try to solve everything. You don't take it personally. You just stay present. Here's what presence looks like. You make eye contact. You stay calm. You genuinely listen. You validate what she feels. This changes everything because psychologically, when a woman feels held emotionally, her nervous system relaxes, her walls drop, her love reactivates. And here's the twist. Presence is not about fixing her, it's about anchoring her. The moment she feels anchored, she becomes the woman you remember. Affectionate, warm, expressive. This is not weakness. This is emotional leadership.
You see,
not dominance,
the lines
not
must
control,
converge at this
not
point.
power,
Otherwise,
but
the whole
stability.
perspective is lost.
And in the final section,
It's
you'll hear the
simple
ultimate
geometry.
truth every loyal husband needs to understand. The truth that determines the fate of your marriage.
Here it is, the truth everything has been leading to. A wife doesn't want a perfect man. She wants a connected one. Women don't leave because a man fails. They leave because he disappears emotionally. They don't shut down because he's flawed. They shut down because he's unavailable. They don't lose love suddenly. They lose it slowly, every time they feel alone beside the person they trust most. And here's the final twist. A wife doesn't fall in love with what you do for her. She falls in love with who you are with her. Your presence, your emotional steadiness, your curiosity about her feelings, your willingness to stay connected when things get messy.
That is what makes a woman feel safe. That is what makes a woman stay loyal. That is what makes a marriage unbreakable. So here's the hidden truth every loyal husband must know. Your emotional presence is the foundation of her emotional world. Break that, and the relationship cracks silently. Protect it, and the relationship becomes unshakable. If you want the next episode breaking down the psychology of why wives emotionally withdraw, comment Part 2. And subscribe before you forget. The next truth might save your marriage.